This is More Than Work, the podcast reminding you that your self-worth is made up of more than your job title. Each week, I'll talk to a guest about how they discovered that for themselves. You'll hear about what they did, what they're doing, and who they are. I'm your host, Rabia. I work in IT, perform stand-up comedy, write, volunteer, and, of course, podcast. Thank you for listening. Here we go. Welcome back to More Than Work, everyone. My guest today is Mike Nellis. He's a Democratic strategist, and he's the host of Endless Urgency, which you can find on Substack. So I'm really excited to have Mike here today, and welcome to More Than Work, Mike. Where am I talking to you from today?
I'm in the city of Chicago, where it's currently negative 10 degrees outside.
Crazy. That's so bad. Yeah, usually I'm talking to my friends and family in California so I can complain about London weather, but I am not going to do that to you because it is basically like being on the beach right now here.
The thing about living in Chicago is 75% of the time it's the greatest city in America by far, like not even close in my opinion. And then 25% of the time it's Hoth from Star Wars, which is just awful.
That is awful, but I'm glad you're, at least staying thawed enough to do this podcast. So I think just first of all, let's just talk about what is Endless Urgency.
So Endless Urgency is my Substack. The phrase comes from, is like my personal life phrase. And for just a little bit of background for people, like if you can't see me, because this is a podcast, I'm a pretty big guy. I weighed like about 320 some odd pounds, but I used to weigh 600 pounds. And over the course of, being a political operative and a bunch of like personal and professional traumas, I did a really crappy job of taking care of myself. And in my 20s, I drank a lot and I dissociated a lot with video games, and I kind of realized that was unhealthy. And then over the course of like a 10-year period, actually probably more 20-year period, to be honest with you, I ate and I ate and I ate for every emotion: happiness, sad, anxiety, depression, didn't matter. And I've struggled with suicidal ideation basically my entire life. And so I basically tried to kill myself with food and got to 600 pounds sometime in the middle of the first Trump term. So I apologize to anybody not political. I'm a political guy by nature, so everything that I say is going to be relative to who was president at the time. So I ballooned up to 600 pounds, and then, it's a longer story, which we can get into if you want, but like had kind of a bottoming out period where like I basically nearly killed myself in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and at the height of like the George Floyd protests and stuff like that, and started to work and claw my way out of it. And what I realized was like, one of the things was I wasn't living my life to its fullest. And what I decided was, as I started to do the mental and physical work that needed to be done to be the person I am today, I needed to develop something new. And that became what I call endless urgency, which is I have a couple of like phrases that define my life. And one of them is I have endless urgency in everything that I do. And sometimes that phrase triggers people where they think it's like, I got to have endless urgency at work, or everything's got to be endlessly urgent in politics because it feels like there's a crisis a minute. But for me, it's whatever I'm doing, I'm present in it. I'm doing it 100%. I am an extremely intense individual. You can ask anybody in my life. Most of them love being around me, but I also drive them insane because I get hyper fixated on things. But then when I went to name my Substack, I was like, okay, well, this is a phrase that I use. How do I define it in politics? And so for me, endless urgency relative to my career is sort of an homage to, one, the respect I have for the Trump administration. And that's going to sound like an odd thing coming from a Democratic strategist, but I respect how they are endlessly urgent to steal and thieve and hurt people and use the power of the federal government in ways that drive me absolutely up the wall. And I would like the future version of the Democratic Party that takes over to be endlessly urgent in the same way, to use power in the same way, but not to hurt people or to steal, but to make sure people don't go bankrupt when they get sick, and to make sure that kids aren't starting their lives getting out of college with a mountain of student loan debt. Like, I'd like to see that version of the Democratic Party. So that's what it's there. It's me staking my claim to what I think the future can be. And it's sort of ideologically agnostic. Like, I'm not a leftist. I'm not a corporate Dem. Like, I'm kind of in the middle. I work for people that I think genuinely care. And so for me, it's about building like the Democratic Party's understanding of power. And we use the Substack to kind of get through what's going on any given day. So like at the time that we're recording this, basically everything we're talking about right now is about the murder of Alex Preddy in Minneapolis by a CBP agent this weekend. And that's what we use it for. And we've got a community of almost 1.2 million people, which is really cool. I mean, we're in the top 100 bestsellers on Substack. So I'm really proud of like what we've been able to build together in such a short period of time.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible following, and for someone like me who's doing their own like media and own content creation and nowhere near those numbers, it's super impressive, but it's also just shows your dedication as well, and your like how people regard you as a place to go for information. And so there was a lot there that I could talk about. I think endless urgency, the way you said it, makes a lot of sense and resonates with me as someone living with MS. Like I've had to live my life in that way, which is hard for people to understand because they're like, just take a break. Why are you so busy all the time? But it's hard to take a break when you do feel like there is like this other thing that maybe could happen, you know? And even the other things you talked about with the depression and amazing. I mean, congratulations on just figuring out how to manage your weight in a different way, because that's so stressful and difficult.
Thank you.
And even now in the age of Ozempic, like, and the pressure to, you know, do that when you don't want to is really tough. So, yeah, just first of all, congrats on
Thank
that.
you. And thanks for sharing your MS diagnosis. Like I can't imagine, you know, I don't know anyone personally except for you now that has MS, but I based on what I know about it, it's like good days and bad days. And I have to imagine, you live your life sort of similar to me. Is like, I feel like I should be dead already. Like, I feel like every day that I'm living is already borrowed time, and maybe I have another 50 years, but I don't know. But like, and I'm kind of somebody like, I should be dead like 5 times over, like not what I've described to you, but like I was born with the umbilical cord severely wrapped around my neck. I was all black and blue and barely breathing. Were you too? Yeah.
I was breech, and I joke about like, why was anyone surprised when I was depressed when I announced it at the start, you know, which is kind of a dark.
That's pretty good. I like that.
I'm going to put a trigger warning on this episode.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's pretty good. But like, I also like, I once got hit by a semi. I once had like a rare disease where I almost lost my leg when I was in my early 20s. It's just like, there's just been enough brushes with it where I'm like, man, I mean, something somewhere is keeping me alive. And like, I'm a practicing Catholic, and I believe that God has some kind of purpose for me somewhere. I don't know what it is. So, and I'm not like a hyper religious, like, you know, God's made me like a blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, there's a reason I'm here, and I might as well figure it out. And in the meantime, it's like, I want to see every movie that I can. I want to read every book that I can. I want to like spend my time intentionally and not. If you go back to when I was like depressed and I was dissociating, it was like playing the same stupid video game over and over again because it was comforting, watching the same stupid TV show. Like, I've watched The Office 10 billion times. I've watched Parks and Rec 10 billion times, which is fine. Right now, I could quote any episode of The Office or Parks and Rec or Community or something like that, which is great. But like, there's other content out there. So like, if I'm watching something, I put my phone down, it's in the other room. Like, I try to be like thoughtful and intentional about it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And, that is amazing. And it's funny because I didn't expect us to have these things in common necessarily, but I've talked about more recently in just talks I've given or whatever that, I didn't see myself living past 40 because I was diagnosed when I was 19, 20. So I didn't know I would. And then now I'm here, I'm 46, and I go, oh, no wonder I didn't plan for this part. So I totally understand, you know, how that feeling, but there is something kind of that gives you an optimism when you live like that for a while, or it gives
you perspective. Like I like to joke, I had my midlife crisis in the middle of COVID. Like I had it in my 30s, and like it was very useful. But like honestly, on an actuarial table, if you look at it, like the average man in America only lives to 72, and like I'm 38, so like technically, based on statistics, now I don't drink, I don't smoke. Like there's, you know, I'm probably hopefully going to live longer than that, but you never know. Like you get hit by a car tomorrow, so like I'd rather live life that way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, very cool. And, so I think going off of that subject though, and just going to talking about your Substack and the work you're doing, and I've watched, you know, some of your videos and seen what you're doing, and it is good because it's a little bit different perspective than you're going to get on the news for sure, because who you're talking to, who your guests are. So can you just talk a little bit about what the content is? Because I do want to encourage people to go check. So
the tagline for me, which I did not come up with, but I do use, is that I am the no bullshit Democratic strategist. And you'll find that Democratic strategists are a dime a dozen on the internet. There's a lot of people that are like, yeah, I know how to help Democrats win an election, and be like, here, let me tell you why Democrats suck. And like, it's a very easy topic over the last year. I too think Democrats suck. So like, I'm not averse to that. But the difference is, and I'll just be perfectly honest with you, like on cable news and on social media, the number of times I see a person whose title is Democratic strategist, who's giving people like me advice on MSNBC or CNN or something, and I've never freaking heard of them when I've been doing this for 20 years, kind of annoys me. And like, really honestly, like other than the big names that like a David Plouffe and a James Carville and stuff like that. Like those are guys who've actually done something. Like the gap between them and anybody else is sort of gone. So for 20 years, I've been working on some of the biggest races in politics, and you hadn't heard of me. And I got dragged out. It's a separate story, but I got dragged out in the public eye due to a right-wing conspiracy theory, and then got into a fight with Jim Jordan, who's the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, and he's a crackpot. And he and I got into a very public feud. Then suddenly I had all these followers, and I was like, well, okay, well, I might as well see what I could do with it. But I hate people who claim they have the answers to win when they've never been in the arena. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to put myself in the arena. I'm going to come in your arena now, and I'm going to question what you're saying, because a lot of the times they give people advice that's bad, in my opinion. And so, and I'm not like a party hack either. Like, I think people hear Democratic strategist, they assume that I'm on like the DNC payroll and I'm in like some secret cabal meeting. It's like, no, I'm a consultant. My job is to recruit candidates, get them to run for office, build their digital infrastructures, do digital advertising for them. I run Authentic, which is one of the largest digital fundraising and advertising firms in the Democratic Party space. I joke that if you've ever gotten a fundraising email from a Democratic candidate and you liked it, I wrote it. But if you didn't like it, I had nothing to do with it. And we can get into a little bit of that too if you want at some point. But so what you get on Substack is you get unfiltered takes from me about what's going on in politics, what the Trump administration is doing and why it's bad, what Democrats should be doing in response to that, and how like people individually can be responding and reacting in their life. And so to me, we're just trying to like make sense of what the hell's going on that day. And I tell my community all the time, they help me make sense of it almost as by hope, probably more than I do. Like, I feel like I'm processing stuff in real time. Like my favorite, and I say favorite in the context of, everything's horrible right now. Let me be clear. At least to me, I think most things are pretty bad right now. During the height of the ICE stuff here in Chicago, so not what's happening in Minneapolis, I wrote a piece where I was reflecting about how, I lived for 20 years basically with a physical disability of being so heavy that I couldn't, walk up a flight of stairs without needing like a 10-minute break. And now I'm physically active. I've completed 8 and 10Ks and stuff like that. And I'm doing well. And I was reflecting on like, man, there's all this shit going on. And like, it's so easy for me to feel like I'm doing something when I'm sitting in my basement and I'm writing these rants and I'm talking to you on these Substack lives. And, and I just sent this thing out, and it was, I should add too, maybe it's a little rambly. I apologize. On Substack, I basically have 2 types of content. I go live and I shoot episodes, and I talk with my audience, and I bring on guests, and we have conversations. So we've had senators on, and DNC Chair Ken Martin, and celebrities like Sean Astin from Lord of the Rings, and Rudy and stuff like that. And then I have people do newsletters on Substack, right? So your typical newsletter is like, welcome to this edition of the Daily, where blah, 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 blah. I'm Michael Barbaro, or some version of that, right? Just wanted to get that Michael Barbaro crack in there. My newsletter is not like that. So I use my newsletter more like a blog, where I'm like, I have these people who want to hear what I have to say. I'm not going to write the most perfect, curated, same structure thing every time. I'm going to crack open a Google Doc, and I'm going to rant. And then I'll clean it up a little bit. And I have some folks who are graciously over here on the side who kind of help me out with that a little bit. But like, a lot of it's very raw, out of my head, clean it up a little bit, get it out. And so sometimes when you're reading something that I've written, I wrote it 20 minutes ago. And so the day that I was reflecting on like not using my body, I wrote this thing that was like, I feel bad about not using my body. Like, there's people out there who are struggling and suffering, and I want to do that. And then the response I got was so incredible that it inspired me and gave me ideas to go out and do that. And I started to coordinate the like counter ICE response in Chicago around some of the Chicago public schools, particularly one by my house that's like 40% Latino. And so that conversation is what we're having. And so I think, unlike a lot of the other Substacks and podcasts that people follow, is mine's really raw. Like, it's just me with a mic talking, trying to get my thoughts out the door, trying to be useful, and like trying to move at the same speed that the ecosystem moves in, without it being this kind of like, corporate Dems are like overly talking points focused, and they're boring, and like they don't curse, and like don't have any new ideas. And like, it's trying to do that, but not going, I'm not like I worked for Bernie Sanders in 2016. I love Bernie, but I'm also not like a full like DSA guy. I'm just kind of like a normal Democrat who's sick of the way the party uses power, and want to try to be useful in this moment. This felt like one way I could do it. And then it blew up. I didn't expect it to be as big as it is. I'm actually shocked.
Okay, so going back really quickly, like 20 years of your career, basically, what got you into doing strategy work in politics, and what got you like down that path in the first
Yeah,
place?
When I joke that I never had a childhood, but that's not true. I grew up in like a really middle class neighborhood in Omaha, Nebraska. My dad's a now retired FBI agent. Mom stayed home, so like pretty normal childhood. I mean, I can come bitch and moan about X, Y, and Z. Can I curse on here? Okay, I've been so good. That's the first curse word I think I've tried.
Well, you just check a box and it says explicit.
All right, great. Not for kids. There we go. But so pretty normal childhood, and then right around the time I'm becoming like aware of politics and what's going on in the world, like George W. Bush is president, and 9/11 happens, and they go to war with Afghanistan, and I'm young, I'm like 13, and I'm like, okay, fine, like we've been attacked, these people are there, I get that, like whatever. And then like a year later, they're like, we're gonna go into Iraq now, like where they got weapons of mass destruction. I remember that George Carlin joke from forever ago, where it was like, we have the evidence that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction because we saved the receipt. But like I never bought the lies, and I thought it was really stupid for like people to go over, people my age essentially, like they were a little bit older than me, going over and fighting a war, which to me seemed like big oil. So like around 15, 16, I started protesting, and then protest movement turned into, okay, it's the presidential election, Bush is gone. So like, who do we want? I got, wrapped up with Barack Obama. Like I was like, Barack Obama's my guy. This is the future. I distinctly remember a neighbor friend of mine, like an older woman, just being like, I don't know why you're wasting time with Barack Obama. Guys like that never win. We're not going to elect that. We're not going to elect a black man president named with his middle name Hussein. And I was like, okay, well, I don't care about any of that because like again, the future belongs to people who are young and dumb and like take risks on stuff, and like that's how you get shit. And like, so I went off and I became like a fellow. Like I basically I was in college at this point, and I stopped going to class and just like took like a fellow, which was like a fancy way of saying we're not going to pay you. And I was doing like data entry and knocking on doors and really boring stuff, and then eventually parlayed that into my first job, and then on that first job, I was a finance assistant on a Senate race in Nebraska, and finally getting a little bit of money. And I hated the job so much because my job was to make sure that the candidate made his phone calls, which to me was like, you're a freaking adult, you should make your phone calls. And then two, it was like I had to make sure that he get his chewing tobacco and like clean up after him and get him his lunch and stuff. And like I'm an 8 on an Enneagram. Like I hate serving anybody and don't really take orders very well. And so like I was just bored and I hated it. And so one day somebody was like, hey, the Obama campaign raised a lot of money online. Does anybody want to figure out how to do that? And I was like, I'll figure it out. Like, just give me literally anything else to do. And then we raised, I don't know, it was probably like $100,000 or $200,000. And then next election cycle, I worked for another Senate campaign. We raised like $1 million online with the strategies that I built. So I'm like one of the first people that kind of helped create online fundraising for Democrats, which at the time was ostensibly in my mind going to be about responding to Citizens United and being a counter to, corporate influence in politics, which it still kind of is, but now it's become this like gross cesspool of like scams and cons and stuff. So it's not like far less pure, but that's how I got into this. It was like this deep desire to like end the Iraq war, feeling like it was unfair, feeling like we needed to turn the page with Barack Obama, which we did. And then unfortunately now we're in this situation. So I don't know how successful we were in the net there, but I don't know.
But no, it's cool. And just that you went from really basically volunteering to what became your career, and now you've pivoted it into something a little bit different than that, but still, all along the same lines of trying to make this party do what it's supposed to be doing. Really. I mean, the Democratic Party definitely, and I'm registered as a Democrat. There are a few times now I've almost just, when I've had to change my registration for whatever reason, thought about not checking that box, but it's really hard for me not to do that. But I do think that as a voter, I mean, especially, and the last election was really rough because we didn't get to pick the candidate really. And I voted for Kamala Harris and I campaigned for her and I made phone calls, and I was in London where I live, but I still did all the stuff, what we were supposed to do, but it was still like really hard. And I think in the end, it hurt us, and I don't know if you think so. I mean, you were more involved certainly, but I don't know, and I'm kind of worried about what we're doing now, right? To change
I'll go pack a couple things there. The first thing is there's not a day goes by where I don't think about registering as an independent. So I've decided that it's better to stay and fight and try to fix my party than it is to like abandon it. And like part of the deep problems that I think America has is that we have, and this is a hot take, we have too many independent voters. And I need some of you to stick around and help us, because like the parties are increasingly being governed by a group of people that, I think don't represent the general interest of the vast majority of Americans. Now, I think the Democratic Party is not as far gone as the Republican Party is. The Republican Party is off the rails. Like if I became an independent tomorrow, nothing would change about the way I voted. Like I cannot stand the MAGA movement. I have very little to no respect for Donald Trump. I can kind of like respect the game aspect of how he plays, but I hate, like as an individual, I think he's a man of low moral character, which is generally the nicest thing I ever say about him. And the people he surrounds himself with are somehow worse often. I tweeted earlier today that like I don't think there's ever been a politician I dislike more than JD Vance. Like it's just the worst type of politician. Like doesn't believe in anything. Like is just situational. Outright lie to you. Like last week he was like, all ICE officers have qualified immunity, and then this week he's like, I never said that. And be like, here's the tape, and he'd be like, that's not me, it's AI. And I'd be like, what? Like why? Like it's just stand by it or say you made a mistake. Like I actually appreciate a politician says they made a mistake on Kamala. Kamala was dealt, in my view, the worst hand of any presidential candidate who's ever run. And I hated Jake Tapper's book, Original Sin, about the whole situation with Joe Biden and his health and the cover up there. But I hated it because like I only believed half of it. Like it's the most infuriating book I've ever read because it's like half of it's not true, but the other half of it's definitely true because I've heard enough of it from my clients and people that I know. But look, they covered up his health. A small group of people who worked around Joe Biden covered that up, and basically, I worked for Joe Biden in 2020, but I've never met the man, you know, other than like maybe like at a meet and greet or something like that, where it was just like quick, hi, how are you? And I was being lied to by somebody who was being lied to by somebody who was being lied to by somebody who was being lied to. It was like the house of cards, and it's really unfortunate, and I wish the party had stepped up as a whole. By the way, there's no, this is a misnomer about the Democratic Party. There's no like Democratic Party. There's like, it's just a loose collection of interests that are just trying to like move forward in a general way together. But nobody really stood up to them and said that this was wrong. And so because of that, we got to the debate where Joe Biden had the worst debate I've ever seen. Like I genuinely judge now whether or not somebody is serious about winning again in the Trump era if they can't admit that that was the worst thing they've ever seen with their eyes. Cause like I felt bad for Joe, like Trump felt bad for Joe. Like it was like, do you know how bad it has to be for Donald Trump to be restrained? Like he just was like in the beginning of that debate, he was like, I'm backing off. And I've never seen him do that. Like that actually scared the hell out of me. It was like, oh, he has, that's in him. Like he's doing this on purpose. So it was really scary. And then, you know, I think it's easy to say it with hindsight now, but I think what we should have done at that moment, like forget what happened before that, because like whatever, but at that moment we probably should have had an open convention and tried to see what it would have looked like, and either Kamala would have been a better nominee or not. Same thing with the primary. If Joe says I'm not running like he promised, and then Kamala runs in 20, what year is it, 2023? I have no clue what year it is anymore. So 2023, God, it's 3 years ago now. But if Joe says 3 years ago, I'm not going to run, and then you have a full year-long Democratic primary, we either nominate a better Kamala Harris with a stronger campaign or a different candidate ready to meet the moment, and they nominate Trump again, and then we win because people hate Donald Trump. Like Kamala Harris's favorables were higher than Joe Biden's were. And the truth is what we needed to do was move away from what people were frustrated with, which was Joe, but they didn't want to go back to Trump. They just had two. You know, Andrew Yang said this once, like right after the election, and like people got really mad at him, but I do think it's right. It's like American politics is about giving people two shitty choices. They're going to pick one. And that's not that I think Kamala was a shitty choice, but to the average American who's experiencing hyperinflation for a 4-year period, like, and she can't distance herself from him, and she's only had 100 days to build a campaign, like it doesn't look great. So I think that hurt us. And Democrats today are still scrambling. They're still scrambling. And this is like the old, I forget who it was. It was either Dick Cheney or one of the other like Bush goons or something like that. They were like, you know, you go to war with the army that you have, not the army that you want to have. And like, that's how I approach politics every day. I'm like, you know, I don't like a lot of these guys either. Sometimes I don't think they're the best that we have to offer, but like, I don't get to decide who the minority leader is. I don't get to decide, like, I go to war with the group, with the team that I have. I'll fix what I can where I can and elevate better leaders. Like I work for some great young folks like that are amazing. I say young folks, they're probably my age. But like Mallory McMorrow in Michigan, Peggy Flanagan in Minnesota, both are running for Senate in their respective states. I've worked for Adam Schiff for a long time. I think he's one of the good ones. I worked for John Tester for a long time in Montana, and he lost in this last election, which sucks. But like, I try to work with people that I think are going to fix it, but then I'll also take on like a tough thing and go, all right, I don't love this person, but like they're our best chance to win. You know, so I'm trying to fix it where I can and move the party where it needs to go. But like, it's a big party and there's a lot of different active voices, and like a lot like this, where Democrats are probably about to, you know, cut off this appropriations funding bill that the Republicans are moving forward because it funds DHS and ICE, right? And I think that's 100% the right call. But some of the conversation I've been having with like other content creators like me And a lot of them are more to the left of me, or at least maybe I wouldn't say they're more to the left of me, but they're more unfettered from electoral politics than I am, which nothing was wrong with that. I go like, look, if you make everything in this shutdown fight about abolish ICE, you'll lose a lot of these Democrats in the middle. And they're like, well, that's not right. Those Democrats should be with us. And I go, I'm with you, but that these 9 senators or whatever it is, these 8 senators will freak out if the fight is about abolish ICE. But if the fight is about getting these ICE agents out of Minnesota and ending the violence and the chaos and the death, we win that fight. And so I'm trying to tell you like what terrain you can fight on where it's politically sustainable. And then you can go out and build political terrain that makes it work for somebody to abolish ICE who's in a state where it's like R+4, Trump won that state in the last election and they got to run for re-election. So I'm very strategic in the way that I think and the advice that I give, which makes me a little bit different of a content creator. And then the other thing is like, I also work on the races. Like I'm working on like, my firm is doing like 50 or 60 races total. I'm probably like seriously involved in like 6. So like I'm actively like giving advice. Like this weekend, like I've been working, I've worked 8 days straight now. And by the way, I am not the victim of what's happened this last week. I don't want to be seen as saying that. But like I'm fucking tired. But on Saturday and Sunday when this happened and I realized it was going to be big, I did a Substack live. I wrote a newsletter. I did another one the next day. I shot YouTube content. I came to the office. I had 3 calls with clients. Like I was like, boom, boom. I didn't spend any time with my son this weekend. Like there was a lot of stuff going on. And like being a content creator, doing stuff like this, the conversation you and I have, that's my side hustle. And it's an increasingly taking up more of my time side hustle. But like, I'm just a little bit different of a content creator because I'm actually out there doing it. And it's sort of, it's like, I feel like I'm giving you a lot of like old adages, but it's like those who can't teach. Like it kind of feels a little bit like that sometimes with some of my, some people in the space, I would say. I don't know. All of whom I love. Well, like this is not a criticism of them.
Yeah, but there's an easier said than done aspect to things. And you can say a lot of things, but doing them is different. And I think I would say I would love to be more left than I am, but I'm also this kind of pragmatist person who goes, well, yeah, we can say all these like big statements and kind of hyperbolic statements about what should be done. But the reality is like being able to do that and getting votes and even practically implementing things is a different story. So you can say, let's do X, like say with healthcare even. Like I live in England, so I see the NHS, but I also see the NHS getting defunded. I see there's a shortage of doctors. I see all this stuff happening over here. And I think over here, they're not getting that. The more you do that, the more you're going to be like the U.S. system. But then in the U.S., I also think practically implementing things as it was over here is going to be very difficult given the volume of people and the cost and everything. Although I do think there's enough money.
There's plenty of money in this country to do anything that you want.
There's so much money.
This is my.
But it's kind of
sorry to interrupt. This is my most common criticism of the Republican Party. Is that anytime that somebody like me is like, hey, we should spend money to make sure people have health care, or hey, we should forgive student loan debt for people, or hey, childcare in this country is ridiculous. Can we please do something about that? Like I have a 6-year-old, like childcare is insane. And it's like the average annual cost of childcare is like $25,000-$30,000 a year for a family. Like what, like at that point you're giving away like half your paycheck for the average American to like just go to work and what? It's not even worth it. And people can't afford to live off one income. So it's a disaster. And anytime I say that, Republicans are like, that's socialism. Look at these liberals. They want to give away your money. Why don't you take responsibility for your life and blah, blah, blah. But then anytime a big oil company is like, I want access to those oil fields. They're like, we are attacking Venezuela tomorrow. And I'm like, I want to use the government for good.
Or, our airline's going out of business. Oh, here's billions of dollars.
And you know what?
Don't worry about it. And it's just
to a certain degree, like an airline bailout, like the Wall Street bailout sucked, right? Like in 2009.
Yeah.
It was 2008 because they passed TARP in 2008. If you poll, the majority of Americans think that Barack Obama passed the Wall Street bailout, which really drives me crazy because he did. He implemented it, but he didn't pass it. He did vote for it in the Senate. Yeah. So the TARP bailout and stuff like that, horrible in the sense that like these people crashed the economy and now we have to go save it. Like they made themselves too big to fail. But you needed to do that to prop up the economy from getting even worse before we had full scale bread lines everywhere. But there was no bailout for Main Street. There was no bailout for the people who lost their homes. There was no bailout for people who lost their jobs, none of it. And nobody went to prison for it. So it's like, at a certain point, there's got to be some give and take here. Same thing with like COVID. Like COVID, they gave out these PPP loans. and then the ERTC tax credits, right? With the two of them are the greatest transfers of wealth from the government to already wealthy people that has ever happened in the history of this country. Now, I'm not saying that PPP was a bad idea, because there are a lot of people who had mom and pop shops with like 10 employees, and they used that in the ERTC to keep their businesses open, and that's a good thing. But there were a lot of people who took them outright fraud, never investigated. A lot of people like Adam Carolla, who's like a comedian and a podcast host, who I feuded with on the internet because he's a big MAGA guy. Like he hates me. It's hilarious. Like I never think
good because
I prefer Jimmy Kimmel. But like he stays up late at night and tweets me, and like I'm asleep. Like it's a ridiculous like relationship he and I have. But like he took like I forget how much, but it was like a $400,000 PPP loan for a podcast business with 2 employees and never paid it back, had it forgiven. Why?
So disgusting.
So he gets to keep all of that money. Yeah. And meanwhile, like 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And like, it's absurd. Like right now, if you have $1 million, you can pay for a pardon if you commit a crime. So like if you commit $100 million fraud, a fraud case, and you get caught and prosecuted, you can just slip a little check in the back of Donald Trump's jacket, the enormous jackets that he wears, and like, because they're ill-fitting.
Or his mom.
Or like give it to the kid,
mom.
or like something like that. Like, it's just it's it's just ridiculous.
They're ill-fitting.
Ill-fitting. I hate the.
Well, it's
as a frumpy man, it annoys me the way that he dresses, because I'm like there's a way to do it. There's a way to wear a suit and look good, and it's not that. So these are not the important issues of the day.
No, it's kind of. They're not, but he looks like Muppet.
Yeah.
Man
also, the tie, the length of the ties. We've all just become normalized to that. But I've never seen another human being on the planet dressed like that, and I don't know why we're just okay with that. I just don't know. Like all his crimes, it's the least of them. But like it's just a fashion crime.
Yeah, fashion.
And I'm wearing like a hoodie, so like who am I to judge? But like when I wear a suit, I look better than that guy. So also he's like I weigh 245 pounds, and I'm like, buddy, we weigh the same weight. We're the same weight. Like he's wearing a girdle, but like whatever. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I weigh as much as Trump, and I don't get it, and I'm like, oh god, if that's not a wake up call,
it's all muscle though. It's all muscle. Whatever.
So speaking of Trump, actually, and I mean, I agree that his fashion is probably the least of the problems. One thing I struggle with, and I know a lot of people struggle with, and I'm seeing a lot of posts online right now, like, if you support Trump or etc., you support ICE or whatever, you don't belong in my life. And people are just cutting people out, and this has been happening for years. And I have family, and I know you do that, and specifically our dads, who are, I think your dad, right, is a Trump supporter.
Yep. All 3 times.
And
unbelievable shit.
Like in my case, an 86-year-old man who, and I'm not going to get into why he supports Trump on this podcast, but fine. Like I can just kind of deal with that. Like I'm not going to change his mind. I mean, when I was a kid doing campaign stuff and for Clinton, honestly, for President Clinton, Bill Clinton, he, didn't get it then. And he's always hated my politics. So fine. But then I have other people who either aren't saying anything, very suspiciously not saying anything. So I don't know where they stand, but I kind of assume where they stand. And I have other people I know where they stand. And for me, it's really hard to tolerate, right? And to even talk to them or even really want to have any relationship with them. But then I also think, like, that's really not what we can do as Americans. I mean, at some point, the next president, hopefully not a MAGA, will have to represent all the people. And I think Trump not representing all the people right now, or not, treating blue states differently and stuff, isn't the right thing. So how are you handling, both personally and professionally, because you have conversations with people who don't agree with you at all. How are you handling
so let me do personal first. I sometimes joke about this when you meet somebody that won't talk about politics. It's like I have a lot of male friends that when you talk about Taylor Swift with them, they'll go like, oh, incredible businesswoman. And I laugh because I'm like, okay, you don't like her music. Just fucking say that. Like it's fine. She doesn't have to be for everyone. I like her. I've got my Taylor Swift bracelet on right now. And inevitably somebody will ask me about it. It's for I think he did it, but I just can't prove it. That's what I wear on which is I think so adept for my life, but it's also my favorite Taylor Swift song. I just want to work. I had to work that in somehow. But like
perfect.
No, it's so in my personal life, like look, I have a very conservative family. My parents are both Republicans. My dad voted for Trump 3 times. My mom voted for Trump twice. One of the times she was just like, I'm not fucking voting. And I actually respect that decision more. But even though I truly think people should vote, even if they vote for candidates I don't like, because I'm a bleeding heart liberal at the end of the day. My brothers are pretty like normal. They're just like normal human beings trying to figure out what the hell to do. I don't think they're like ideological. And I should add, like, most human beings who don't follow politics at the level that I do, and maybe you do, are not ideological. Like, the average person doesn't care about the difference between socialism and capitalism, or leftism or conservatism, or MAGA, or whatever, blue MAGA. I laugh. Blue MAGA is my favorite dumb term on the Democratic side. MAGA versus woke, I guess, if you want to do that. It's the dichotomy. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I love when people talk about blue MAGA. That's a whole other conversation. I just think it's really silly. But most people don't care about that. Most people are like, can I pay my bills? Can the government get off my back? Can I take a vacation? Do I feel safe in my community? Are my streets paved? Like, I think most politicians get so focused on like other stuff and like broader ideological stuff that they're trying to solve that it's like, fix a road. Like, and I'll give you an example. Like Zoran Mondani this week made sure that the entire city of New York was fully plowed of snow after the snowstorm. And he was out there personally doing it. And I'm like, that's good politics. Like, that guy gets it. Yeah. And I don't agree with him on everything policy wise, but like, man, he gets how to be a politician, particularly an executive. And I'm really impressed with him, even if he's not from my quote unquote wing of the party or whatever. And I don't really care about this stuff. But so for me, it's like, okay, he's my dad. I only have one dad. I only have one mom. I'll tell anybody, like, if you've got a toxic relationship that you need to get out of because that person is, you know, rude or mean to you or like whatever, like, get out of it. Like, I'm not going to like lecture you on your situation, but I do think way too many, you know, liberals, Democrats, whatever, are too quick to cut out anyone in their life who doesn't vote the way that they want to. And I think it's hurtful because, like, one, communication and community are the bedrocks of a functional democracy. And we're already being pulled apart from each other in so many different ways. And these tech billionaires have created so many tools that you never have to leave your house to do anything. And so like people have replaced like going out to a bar and hanging out with their friends and like having a drink and being a human being with playing video games and Reddit comments. And I don't even have to go to the grocery store and have an awkward conversation with somebody because I can just order it on DoorDash and not notice the 25% upcharge that I'm being charged. It's why people think their burrito costs $30. If you go to Chipotle, it's only like $13, which is still too much for a burrito, but it's not $30. Yeah. So like, right. People you know, so, and I remind people all the time, it's like, the invention of the ATM machine. I don't know if you know the story. The guy who invented it, specifically invented it because he hated conversations with people while standing in line to get money at the bank. So he created an efficiency so that wouldn't happen anymore. But like, if the primary motivation for a lot of these like awkward tech billionaires is I don't want to deal with people, and now the whole world has been optimized for that, it's no wonder like anxiety, depression, suicide are like higher than they've ever before. Drug abuse, alcohol abuse, so much higher. Deaths of despair are off the charts, particularly for men. White men in this country, by the way, are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than any other group of people in the country. Yeah. And nobody ever talks about that other than Scott Galloway. So I think that's a problem. And so we're isolating ourselves. So don't isolate yourself more from the family. You only get one family. And so, and again, you have toxic family members, get them out. I get it. The second reason I think this is important is like, and friends too. Like, I don't think you have to like ditch a friend because they voted a way that you don't like. Yeah. One of my best friends, total gun nut, voted for Trump. Like, it just is what he is. I'd leave my kid with him. I'd probably make sure he didn't have any of his guns on him. I'm a gun owner too, but like, it's, you know, he's a good dude. And I try to evaluate that separate from politics because people make decisions that are irrational in politics, but also, and I think this is super important for the left to not get in an echo chamber. How the hell do you know what you actually believe in if you never talk to somebody who disagrees with you? Like, I'm such a sharper strategist, in my opinion, because I have my dad and my mom who will give me their perspectives. And like, I think they're batshit crazy like half the time. But now I know a little bit more and I communicate a little bit more when I'm doing a race. And I'm forced to like, you know, steel sharpens steel, iron sharpens iron, whatever the phrase is. I feel like I've given you so many like BS, like, you know, business school phrases that I have on this podcast. So I'm going to sound like one of those guys. But like, I'm better because of that. I'm better because of my friends. I'm better because you alluded to it in the professional side of this conversation. But like, I go on a lot of right-wing TV and I do Piers Morgan and I do Fox News and I do News Nation, I do Newsmax, and I go on podcasts. And like, part of the reason I do that is because one, nobody else does it in the Democratic Party. We were like, oh, well, screw Fox News. They're, you know, racist and horrible and blah, blah, blah. So we just won't go there and be like, highest cable audience, largest cable audience in the world. So the left withdrew themselves from having tough conversations with people. And then on top of that, we stopped creating new voices of people who could go in there and talk. Like the conversation around Harris going on Joe Rogan's podcast, which has been talked to death. And I blame myself for half the reason it's been over death, because I brought it up a ton because I thought she should have done it. But like, the other thing is like, she didn't have any surrogates on the left, TM trademark, that could go on a podcast like that or Theo Von or one of these others in this new media environment and talk, except for Mark Cuban and maybe Pete Buttigieg. That was it. There's nobody else that could do it.
Yeah.
And it's annoying because there should be like 30 people that could go do that. And Trump had that. Trump had all kinds of people that would go for him, celebrities, musicians, politicians, all kinds of stuff himself. He was doing the Undertaker's podcast for Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame legend. And sometimes I just want to listen to the Undertaker's podcast and think about 90s pro wrestling and not have Donald Trump down my throat. But I can't do that because twice I had to deal with that in 2024. So where was my Kamala Harris version of that? You can't tell me they couldn't have found other people and curated that. Now, they didn't have enough time, but the party as a whole didn't curate that. And we think we can win without talking to you. And I think that's really stupid. And there's one more thing I'll add on top of that. I'm a huge fan of The Simpsons. And there's an episode where Ned Flanders reminisces about his parents, and his parents are like beatnik hippies that don't believe in punishment for kids. And so they go, and Ned is like a terror and never listens to anything that they say. And they go to a therapist, and the dad says to the therapist, "We've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas." And that's the Democratic Party on men every election. Our numbers with men are horrendous. And the conversation is always on our side, what's wrong with men? Why are white men so bad? Why are black and brown men, why do they hate Kamala Harris? Are they sexist? Are they racist? What is it? And I'm I'm sure some of that is true. I'm not going to pretend like it's not. But did you say anything to them? Did you center their issues in your campaign? Did you go talk to them? Yeah. Did you organize in those communities? Did you create surrogates that could go talk to them? You didn't. So no shit. The Republicans spend an unbelievable amount of time appealing to young men. And by the way, now they're floundering with that because what do young men want? Jobs, economic opportunity, a house, groceries, and a mate. That's what young men want. And so now they can't get any of that because everything's even more screwed up than it was before. So much so that people are missing Joe Biden. And at the end of Biden's presidency, he was as unpopular as Jimmy Carter was. Historically unpopular president. Right. So I just Democrats need to show up, and they're doing a better job now of it. And it's one of the reasons I'm doing this is so I can go in those spaces and be like, hey, let me talk to you a little bit about this stuff. And I think it works more often than not, but it's something that compounds. Yeah. And the other thing is, I'm sorry, I'm ranting. So you tell me when you want to take the mic back. But you get people that when I do these, when I go on Newsmax, and Newsmax is crazy. I'm doing Newsmax tomorrow. They're crazy. And, they'll go, "You're not going to win those people over. You're not going to win all those people over." I'm like, hold on. I know I'm not going to win those people over. I know that when I go on Newsmax or when I do Jesse Waters, I'm the heel. Okay. Jesse Waters is the face. Okay. I don't agree with that. But do you think Thanos thought he was the bad guy in Avengers Infinity War? He did it. But you get people thinking and you get people talking and you treat them with respect. And that 5 to 10% of that audience that's hey, everything is more expensive right now. What's that about? Some people get there, and a fraction of movement. If you just moved 1 or 2% of white dudes in this country, Donald Trump could never be elected again. Yeah. Because the other thing I have to remind people all the time, because Democrats are again in a bubble, and human beings as a whole are bad at understanding the numbers and the structures of society, is twice as many white men in raw numbers voted for Kamala Harris than black women. Now, black women voted for Kamala Harris 90 to 10, and Kamala won 41% of white men or something like that. But that's how many white men there are in this country. So go communicate with them in their spaces. Don't abandon anybody. I'm not sitting here going, I'm okay losing 10% of black women if we go do this. I'm not saying that. It's it should be yes and. We should be able to do both. We should walk and chew gum. Yeah. And Democrats are kind of afraid to have those conversations. It's I just keep ranting. I'm sorry. But I'm one of the founders of White Dudes for Harris. And when we did White Dudes for Harris, a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, you can't organize white people on a Zoom call. What are you going to do? Are you doing a Klan rally in support of Kamala Harris?" I'm like, buddy, if we're doing black women for Harris and we're doing black men for Harris, we're doing Hispanic men, you have to tell white men that they have a seat at the table too. Otherwise, they're going to go to the only party that appeals to them. And so as cringy as that call was at times, and I was not fully in control of everything that happened on the call. I love Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but maybe him high from his cabin, talking about Kamala Harris was maybe not something I would have put on TV. No offense to JG, but there's some stuff I would have done, but it was moving the ball forward. And I would note as well, because people like to rag on me for this, Kamala Harris did do marginally better with white men than Joe Biden did 4 years prior. Just wanted to get that out there. Because nobody's interested in that nuance, but I would like to tell people it was 1%. Wasn't great, but it was 1%. So
hey, it's 1%.
I'll die on that hill. You can put it in my obit. So whenever I die, former senior advisor, White Dudes for Harris, he apologized to anyone who was upset about it, but would like to note Kamala Harris did do 1% better with white men in that election.
Amazing. We can
Yeah.
italicize it. Oh, one thing I like to ask every guest is just, do you have any advice or mantra you'd like to share with people? Maybe just something you live by or
Um,
want people
I
to
have a
think
ton of
about?
mantras. We're a big affirmation family in the Nellis household. I have a little 6-year-old. You could invite my 6-year-old on; he'll tell you all of them. It's hilarious.
Nice.
He will coach them back to me when I'm frustrated about something. But like, I'm big on like 1% better every day. So I'm trying to just sort of nick forward every day and create a little bit of progress, and knowing that like there's going to be days where everything sucks and it just feels like I'm making no momentum. And then, like I have another phrase like that is like famine, feast. And social media is a lot like that. Like, that as a content creator, like, I have days where I'm like, man, nothing's performing well and everybody hates me and the algos are mad at me and I've lost my step. And then it'll be like the next day, it'll be like, everything's great. And I gained 10,000 followers or whatever it is. So it's just like, just keep going. Like, don't give up is a big one for me. I'm also, there's 2 other quotes I'll give you that are important to me. So I'm a big James Clear Atomic Habits guy. I think Atomic Habits is the best book I've ever read. I attribute it to a large part of the reason, A, that I'm as productive as I am as a human being, but also B, it's the reason I was able to lose all this weight, was reading that book, was, identity-based habits and stuff like that. But he has a quote that's, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And as an 8 on the Enneagram, as we talked about earlier, like I'm a mess when it comes to systems and processes. And I probably have undiagnosed ADHD. And like systems are not my first go-to, but if I build a system myself, I can follow it. And if I can follow that system, I can ideate and improve it over time. So like, I know that now. And so like now I fall to the level of my systems. And so shit gets done. And when I was a kid, I couldn't, like even right now, like if you tell, like my wife is like, will you take the trash out later? I'll go, sure. And then I'll immediately forget about it like 5 seconds later and she'll get mad at me. But if I write it down and I have a whole, I used to carry a notebook, physical notebook with me everywhere. And then I turn that into like a full Notion setup that I have. So I have a full like action priority matrix. And Tiago Forte is a creator that people should check out who does a lot of like on YouTube systems and processes for like your second brain. He's got a book on it. It's really good. So I do a lot of that and it's super useful. And then the third thing I'll tell people is Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, is amazing. If you'd like to get to the point, or maybe not where I'm at, because who would want to be where I'm at, but like, I get yelled at by Jesse Waters or like Laura Loomer or like Donald Trump. And like, I don't give a shit, like whatever. I'd probably be excited by that at this point. But he has a quote that is, the pursuit of the positive is inherently negative, and paradoxically embracing the negative is positive. And so like that's which is just like a fancy way of saying like embrace the suck. Like things that suck can be good for you, and don't wake up every morning looking for things to be good for you. Find the good in everything around you. And so that keeps me to be like, as Kamala Harris would say, and I borrowed this as one of my core values, is joyful warrior. Like she would say that all the time. She'd be like, I'm a joyful warrior. We're joyful warriors. It's a shitty time. We're gonna make our way through it. And like, it's one of the core values for the business, for the content creation business, is like joyful warrior. We're going to hang it on a wall over here because like, I refuse to be miserable. I refuse to be made miserable for 4 years of this administration. Like I'm not going to do it, especially when I have like a 6-year-old boy at home. Like these are core years. I'm not going to get them back. So like, I'm going to enjoy my life and I'm going to be as useful as I can. So that's roughly where it is.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And Joyful Warrior was one of my favorite things that she said too. Well, thanks for that. So the last thing is just have the fun 5. There are 5 questions that we can just go through, and they're fun for some of us. So question 1 is, what's the oldest t-shirt you have?
The oldest t-shirt I have. I don't have any old t-shirts because I've lost so much weight. I got to throw them all away. In fact, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I threw away 6 or 7 trash bags full of clothes that did not fit. So I'm going to like retake the question, tell you about the newest t-shirt that I have, which is a hoodie that I bought at the Zach Brown concert at the Sphere last weekend that my wife took me to.
Oh, nice. And at the Sphere, that's
which then I immediately spilled like oil on it while I was cooking the other day. So we got it out though. Good. It's okay. We moved. We have a system for when I spill now. It's very helpful. Amazing.
Good. Systems
are good.
If every day was Groundhog's Day, like Bill Murray, the Bill Murray movie, what song would you have wake you up every morning?
It would probably be like a Zach Brown Band song. Like there's so many that I like. He's got, what's the new one? Give It Away is like the new song that they have. It's actually the anthem of the college football playoffs this year. So I've heard it like 1,000 times this year. But I really like that song. There's a bunch that he has. Like I tend to listen to a lot of Zach Brown Band. They're like my go-to. It's funny because I mentioned Parks and Rec earlier, but you know how have you seen the show? Yeah, so when Ben Wyatt is depressed, he wears a t-shirt of like letters from Cleo. So my version of that is like
yeah,
the Fray. When I'm miserable and depressed, I listen to the Fray. But when I'm happy, which is most of the time, I listen to Zach Brown Band. And then like in the middle, it's like
Nice.
nothing.
Yeah.
Like other than like anytime somebody's like, you want to hear this new song? I'd be like, sure. Because like I've discovered Japanese breakfast. I don't know if you've heard of them. I love Japanese breakfast. They're so good. So my staff are laughing at me right now.
They need to look. They need to take us seriously. We're
Just
being
because
serious.
I'm old doesn't mean I can't enjoy young, hipster, cool Zoomer music, okay?
Yeah, you
Kids
can
today.
actually.
Kids
yeah.
today.
I know.
Haters.
These kids, I know. And they're probably are. I mean, I'm 46, so they're young. All right. Third one. Coffee or tea
Neither.
or neither?
I never had tea. Well, I've had tea, but I don't really like it, and I've never really been a coffee guy. Give me a Coca-Cola at noon with lunch any day. Yeah.
All right. Nice. All right. Can you think of a time that you like laughed so hard you cried or something that always cracks you up?
I mean, the two stupid things that come to mind, like my son's hilarious. Like just like my son is the largest vocabulary, but it's not a brag. It's the largest vocabulary of a 6-year-old I've ever heard. I laugh so hard anytime he appropriately, correctly uses a big word. And I'm always he'll be like, Dad, you're being facetious right now. And I'll be like, shut the fuck up. Who talks like that? I don't talk like that. Like, so like, where did you get that from? And then you know what really cracks me up, and it's so dumb, but like I love bad Trump impersonations. Like, and I have one, and it's like, America, Hillary Clinton, she's terrible, I hate her, you know. And then so like in my life, what cracks me up is like walking around the office and like just taking any conversation that we're in and be like, oh, they're making chicken in the crock pot. A lot of people say crock pot. I say Instant Pot. You know, it's like shit like that, and like it's not good, but like you know what I'm doing. So it's like I like
fun.
I like stuff
yeah,
like
it's
that.
fun for you. Yeah. Yeah, well, just how he always says, you might call it whatever, and it's like, that's what it's called.
Oh, I go, a lot of people are saying I might deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. A lot of people, I'm not saying it, but a lot of people, you know.
Yeah.
Stupid. He's ridiculous, but God damn it, he's funny.
He is.
It's like George W. Bush.
Like
George W. Bush was horrible, but God damn it, he was funny. America.
Yeah. Well, the thing he had too is he's handsome. Like as he got older, like a lot of women were like, "Oh God, why?" You know, like we're so annoyed. Chelsea Handler talked about that. How she's.
If
so
we're
annoyed.
talking about politicians that got handsomer the older that they are, can we talk about Mitt Romney? Because that guy's an absolute fox. Like just an absolute fox.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable. I can only hope to age that well. I'm gonna spend the rest of my life trying to make sure that I have the exact right amount of gray to recreate his haircut when I'm like 60 years old. Unbelievable. I hated him in I love him now, but like in 2012 when he was running against Obama, I hated him, but I was just so I'm bi, so like all the time I was just like, wouldn't vote for him, but Mitt Romney could get it.
See, we have more in common. So someday
I'm gonna run for alderman, and somebody's gonna find that exact clip and take it out to embarrass the shit out of me, and I can't wait. So to the researcher who found this, congratulations.
Yeah, good, and thank you for acknowledging good SEO.
Yeah.
And then the last question. Who inspires you right
who
now?
inspires me? Such a cop-out right now to say this, but I really do mean it, is like anybody putting their body on the line right now with ICE agents out there out of control. Like Alex Preddy, the man who was murdered in Minneapolis, just recording, just documenting and lost his life for it. And how do you not be somewhat inspired about that? Like I just, it's horrible, but like, and then people keep showing up and they keep showing up and they keep showing up and like, and I'll keep showing up too. So it's like, I just, I think it's probably that. And then, you know, my wife is the toughest SOB I've ever met, and she's been through so much. So like, it's, you know, that too, which is both cliched answers, but like those are what I have. So yeah.
No, they're great. Yeah. All right, cool. So then where do you want people to go to find you?
Just endlessurgency.com or find me on any major social media platform. We're building up our YouTube big right now. We're about to hit 10K after launching it a couple weeks ago.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, and those links will be in the show notes. Well, Mike, thanks so much. It was a lot of fun to do this and also like super informative. I appreciate you.
Yeah, this was a blast. Happy to do it. Best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. You can learn more about the guest and what was talked about in the show notes. Joe Maffia created the music you're listening to. You can find him on Spotify at Joe, Maffia. Rob Metke does all the design, for which I am so grateful. You can find him online by searching Rob, Metke. Please leave a review if you like the show, and get in touch if you have feedback or guest ideas. The pod is on all the social channels at More Than Work Pod or at Rabia Comedy on TikTok. While being kind to others, don't forget to be kind to yourself.